Hello, friends. Micah Silverman here of Snyk. Fetch the Flag 2025 is over, and I thought I would share with you some of the results of one of the challenges that I really liked. I had never seen it before, called Unfurl. So let's go take a look at that. Now, interestingly, this one has 259 solves. It's marked as easy, but that's a lower number of solves than even some of the medium ones and compared to some of the other easy ones. So let's take a look at it. And putting on my CTF 101 hat, we always want to look at the clues that were given right out of the gate. So first of all, it's called unfurl. All right, that might be helpful. And it says we've been working on a little side project. It's a URL unfurler. You punch in any site and you get metadata, main image, the works. We're publishing it as open source. So the challenge code we're given. Anytime you're given the code, that is a gift in a Capture the Flag event. So you should definitely download that code and look at it. We'll get to that in just a moment. Also, we can start this challenge. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to fire up a container for us, and it now gives us the link for that container. This is a unique link, and we're going to go take a look at it. Okay, so I'll make this bigger. Here's our link, and all it says is to put in any URL and then unfurl it. So let's try the happy path first. I always like to go through the happy path and just interact with it the way that it's expecting us to. So I'll give it Snyk, I'll click unfurl, and it gives us some results. It gives us a title, a description, it shows us an image, and we can even look at the raw HTML if we want. All right, that's pretty straightforward. Now, again, we're just gathering clues. We're going through the happy path. With that in mind, let's take a look at the code and see what the code can tell us before we start hammering on this to try to get the flag, which is the point of the whole challenge. So I've already preloaded the code into Visual Studio Code here, and I'm going to start by looking at the Docker file. The Docker file can give us a bunch of information, and the thing that catches my attention is right here at the bottom. Node app.js, that's pretty normal. But then I see node admin.js. It's running this admin app separately. So there are actually two apps running, and the only port that's exposed is port 5000. Now, again, pursuing the happy path, let's look at app.js, and we can see that by default, it's going to be listening on port 5000. Okay, fair enough. But we also know that it's going to be running admin.js. Let's go look at that admin.js file. And I'm moving fast here because when you're working in capture the flag events, you're often time constrained and you want to move fast. We're not looking for deep kind of, knowledge that's really going to, move the needle on our overall knowledge base. Now, there is kind of, as an aside, there is kind of this effect of working in capture the flags where over the course of the event, you may put a pin in things that you want to go back to and learn deeply. But for an individual challenge, we want to move fast. Now, the thing that catches my eye here in admin.js is that it's running on this random port, and the port range is going to be somewhere from 4999 between 1024 and 4999, which is what, 1024? So almost 4,000 ports that this could be running on. So there's this thing called an admin app. It's running on some random port, and there's almost 4,000 possibilities. Now, I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to it. The other thing is that it's using this admin routes file. It's going to load that in, and I kind of want to see what's going on in this admin routes. And there's a bunch of stuff here. It's got some users defined. It's got this front door, if you will, where you can see admin settings, etc. System info, get a list of users, logs, settings, execute. And it's telling us that this isn't terribly secure. It looks like it's got some guardrails here where it's going to make sure that only local hosts can access it. Now, that kind of tickles my brain a little bit, localhost. I know that the main app, the front door, maybe I can access that through localhost also. I'm just curious here, right? So what if I put in HTTP localhost 5000? Because I know the regular app is running on port 5000. Let's unfurl that. So interesting. It can go against itself off of localhost. That's an important data point. Now, I know that the admin app is running on some other port, but I don't know which port, anywhere between 1024 and 49999. And I get this value back, failed to unfurl the URL. Failed to unfurl the URL. Now, what I'm hoping is that there's some kind of API that's happening in the background that maybe we can interact with directly. Let's take a look at the network tab and let's go to Unfurl. And if you notice, it's sending a post to this endpoint, to this Unfurl endpoint. And if we look at the payload is a URL. Now that's interesting. That immediately makes me want to head over to the command line. And let me give this a quick little copy here. And I'm going to use my favorite client. You could use curl or Postman. I'm going to use HTTPie. That's my personal favorite. So it expects a post. As we saw, it expects a post. And it expects to have this parameter localhost 5000, right? Again, I'm going to try the happy path first and make sure that I can interact with it from the command line. And I can see I get this JSON response, which the application then renders for me. So description, there's that raw HTML, there is no image, and it's got a title. So this is great. I know that I can interact now with this furl, and I also know that there's an admin app, a whole separate app that's going to be running on one of these ports. Now, I could try to go about the business of, putting in each of these ports manually, but that's not the CTF way. We want to script this. So I am going to recall this command that I did. And the only thing that needs to change here is the port, because every time you fire up this app, it runs on a different port. So our port is 32486. 32486. 32486. And so let's kind of break down what it is that I'm doing here. In fact, let me refresh here so we can get this at the top. And I said 32486. 32486. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about what's going here. This is a quick little bash script. I'm going to assign I inside a loop the values 1024 to 4999. I'm going to echo I, and I'm going to post to this endpoint, unfurl, and I'm going to pipe it through JQ. JQ is a command to parse JSON, and I'm going to look for an error. Now, let's just take a look here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put this into another thing, because what I want to show here, let's do 4998. Okay. What I want to show here is we get this JSON back where it says failed to unfurl. Failed to unfurl. Okay. And so for each of these, I should see when there's a JQ, when I pass it through JQ error, I'm going to do that right here. It finds it. It finds that error, failed to unfurl. Now, let's say there wasn't an error, right? Because we know that the app.js is running on port 5000. So if there isn't an error, I'm going to get null. And so now I can let this run, and when I get null, I'll know that I found the port that the admin server is running on. So let's let this run, and it's going to take some amount of time. Now I can go off and go work on another challenge while this is running, but at some point it's going to show null. And by the way, I'm echoing out the port for each one of these. So it's going to, most of them, in fact, all of them, except for one, is going to be failed to unfurl the URL. But at some point, null is going to come by. Now I'm going to let this run, and through the magic of video editing, we're going to jump ahead. All right, welcome back. And if you notice on port 1727, we got the null, meaning that it did unfurl the URL 1727. So now let's just try that 1727. Ah, there's our admin panel. This is the admin app. So this is really part one of the challenge. We've now found where the admin app is running. So let's take a deeper look at our code. And before I go any further, I'm going to run a Snyk scan on this code. And to do that, I need to enable the Snyk plugin, the Snyk extension rather. And I'm going to go ahead and scan this code and see if there's any glaring issues with it that maybe I can exploit, especially in the admin code, now that I have access to it. And of course, there's a whole bunch of issues that have been found here. And if I expand admin route, command injection looks really promising. There's cross-site scripting. I want to take a look at command injection here. And now that it's found it, I'm actually going to disable it again, only because I want to get rid of all the adornments. So it was saying that there's a command injection right here because it's executing a command. So when I hit this execute endpoint, it now is going to execute a command. So it's doing this localhost check. Well, I'll be coming in on localhost. It's getting this command off of the query parameter. So we're going to send it a command to execute, and then it's going to execute that command. And if all goes well, it's going to send its output to the back to the browser. So let's just take a look and do a simple command and see if I can do this. So it's slash execute, and then it's cmd equals ls. Let's do a directory listing. And there it is. Oh, and look at that. If we look at the raw output, we see that there's a flag.txt. Well, that sounds super promising. Okay, so now we're into part two. We've found the port that the admin server is running on in part one. Now in part two, we've executed the happy path here to see that we can execute a command. Well, let's do a command cat flag.txt. And now if I take a look, there is the flag. And I've already solved this, so it's just going to tell me that I already solved it. But if I drop this flag back into the interface, this is the correct flag. So I had a lot of fun with this. I hope you found this explanation interesting and useful. And happy hunting in the CTFs that you participate in.